My name is Ryan. I am 24 years old, and I need to tell you about the night something happened on a dark country road in Ohio that I have never been able to fully explain. I have been carrying these stories for a long time now. More than one. 3 of them, actually. And each one happened to me personally at different points in my life, in different states, under different circumstances. But they all have one thing in common. They all happened in the dark, on a road, alone or close enough to it. Before I get into it, drop a comment and tell me where you are listening from tonight. And if you are someone who drives late at night for work or for travel, stick around, because this might change how you think about pulling over. Part 2. I grew up in a rural part of Ohio, the kind of place where you can drive 5 miles in any direction and not see a single street light, where the nearest grocery store is a 20-minute drive, and the roads that connect everything to everything else run through nothing but trees and farmland. You grow up there and you stop thinking about how dark it actually is. It becomes background, it becomes normal. And that is part of the problem, I think. When something becomes normal to you, you stop being alert to it. My friend group back then was 4 people. Me, Michael, Eddie, and Daniela. We had all gone to the same high school, all stayed in the area after graduation, all fell into the same rhythm of hanging out on weekends like we were still 17. Going out for us meant driving into town. The bars were there. The parties were there. Town was 20-some minutes away from where we lived, and that meant one of us always had to volunteer to be the designated driver. We took it seriously. We rotated. That particular Saturday night in late August, it was my turn. The party was at a house on the far edge of town. One of those sprawling things where you walk through the door and immediately realize you only know about a third of the people there. We got there around 9. I stuck to soda and water all night while the other 3 did what they usually did. By 11, Eddie was somewhere between conscious and unconscious in a recliner in the corner. By midnight, Michael was in a full-volume conversation with himself about something that had happened at work 2 weeks ago, and Daniela was in that particular phase of drunk where she genuinely believed she was fine and kept insisting on it every 15 minutes without anyone asking. I called it at 12:30 and started rounding people up. Getting them all into the car took a solid 10 minutes. Eddie needed almost physical guidance. Michael wanted to say goodbye to approximately 40 people. Daniela moved on her own, but with the kind of careful, deliberate steps that told you she was putting effort into appearing steady. We got onto Route 513, heading home. No lights on that road. 2 narrow lanes. Cornfields on one side, woods on the other, with occasional gaps where a farmhouse sat far back from the road. The kind of road where your headlights feel like the only thing between you and total blackness. I kept it under 50. Michael was half asleep in the passenger seat. The radio was playing something low. The air coming through the slightly cracked windows smelled like cut grass and warm night. I had been driving for maybe 12 minutes when Daniela started shifting around in the back seat. Little restless movements at first, then more urgent. She leaned forward and tapped my shoulder and told me she really had to use the bathroom. I told her we were almost home, maybe 8 more minutes. She said 8 minutes was not going to work. I tried to hold firm. I really did. But she escalated fast, and honestly, I had been pushing down a similar situation myself for the last 20 minutes. 3 sodas at a party, plus an hour of driving will do that. And with her now getting vocal about it, my own discomfort suddenly became a lot harder to ignore. I pulled over. The shoulder was flat and wide enough. I put the hazards on. The orange light pulsed slowly over the front of the corn on the left side of the road. The stalks were end of summer tall, 7 feet at least, dense and dark. On the right side was a tree line. The woods started about 15 feet off the road with a strip of high grass in between. Daniela got out before I even had the car fully in park. She crossed the gravel shoulder and pushed straight into the corn without hesitation. The stalks swallowed her in about 3 seconds. Gone. I got out and walked to the right side, into the grass and a few steps into the trees. Enough distance for privacy. The woods were quiet, just crickets and the soft movement of leaves. I finished quickly, zipped up, and walked back to the car. I got in, closed the door, checked the clock on the dash. 12:47. I waited. 1 minute went by, then 2, then 3. I looked at Michael, still slumped against the window, eyes half open, doing that thing where you are awake enough to be upright, but not aware enough to actually process anything. 4 minutes. I said her name from the driver's seat. Not loud, just a normal call. Nothing came back. Part 3. I got back out of the car. I walked to the edge of the cornfield and called her name again. Louder this time. The sound went into the corn and seemed to just disappear. That is what corn does at that height. It absorbs sound. It breaks it up. You call into it and you feel like you are shouting into a mattress. No answer. Michael had gotten out and was leaning against the hood now. He called her name too louder than I could. His voice carried. There was nothing that could have been more than 100 feet in there and not heard it. Still nothing. I looked at the field. The stalks shifted in the light breeze, just the tops swaying slightly. The orange pulse of the hazard lights moved across them in slow, 2-second intervals. Orange light shadow, orange light shadow. I stood there listening for something. Rustling. Laughing. Her voice. Anything that would tell me she was just messing around in there, finding this whole situation funnier than we did. But there was nothing. I am the kind of person who lives by the gut, and my gut at that moment was sending something low and steady, not a scream, just a low hum, the kind that says this has been too long, something is not adding up, you need to go in there. I grabbed the small flashlight from the glove box. I always keep one in there. I started doing it after I got a flat tire on a dark road 2 years before that and had nothing to work with. It is the kind of habit you develop without thinking about it until suddenly it is exactly what you need. I told Michael he was coming with me. He groaned. He said she was definitely just hiding and trying to scare us. He was still smiling about it. I told him I did not care. He was coming. Eddie was in no shape. He had folded himself into the corner of the back seat and was breathing in the long, slow rhythm of someone who has completely checked out. I left the hazards on, pocketed my keys, and pushed into the corn with Michael right behind me. The first thing you notice is the sound. The stalks make a loud, papery brushing sound when you push through them. Sharp leaves scrape your arms and hands. The ground is uneven soft in some places, packed hard in others, and you have to watch your feet to avoid twisting an ankle. The smell is strong too. Soil and something slightly fermented like plant decay. 2 rows in, and the road was already invisible. I swept the flashlight ahead and to either side. It lit up maybe 10 or 12 feet in each direction before the corn swallowed it. The shadows between the rows were deep and layered one behind the other, repeating back into the dark. Michael kept calling her name. In between his words, I listened as carefully as I could. Just the wind in the upper stalks, just our feet on the ground. We went maybe 50 feet in and stopped. Nothing. No sign of her. No footprints I could make out in the uneven soil. Then I heard it. Off to the right, maybe 15 to 20 feet away. Footsteps. The specific sound of someone moving through corn. That slow, heavy, deliberate push of a body between rows. Not quick, not panicked. Steady and even. I put my arm out and caught Michael across the chest. He stopped. He looked at me. I did not say anything. I just held my hand up, and we both went completely still. The footsteps stopped. I called Daniela's name. Quiet, almost conversational. No response. Michael called her, full voice. Nothing. We waited. 10 seconds. 15. The corn shifted in a small gust of breeze and then settled again. The footsteps resumed. Same direction. Same pace. Moving parallel to us. Not toward us. Not away. Just alongside, matching our position. I called her name again. The footsteps stopped again at the sound of my voice. Part 4. Something about that stopped me cold in a way the footsteps alone had not. The pattern of it. The way the sounds responded specifically to my voice. Stopping when I called. Starting again in the silence. Michael had stopped laughing. I could hear the shift in his breathing. Slower, more measured. He was paying attention now. I swept the light to the right again. The beam cut between the rows. Shadows and stalks, and more shadows. Nothing visible. We moved forward slowly. I kept the light angled to the right, watching that direction. Michael stayed close behind me. After another 30 feet, the density of the corn began to ease. The rows started to space out, and then we stepped into a clearing. It was narrow, maybe 4 feet wide, running left and right like a lane through the field. A maintenance path, the kind they cut so equipment or workers can move through without fighting the whole crop. The ground there was flatter and more compressed. The sky was just barely visible above the gap in the canopy, dark gray against black. I swept the light left. Nothing. I swept it right. 3 footsteps, slow and heavy. And then the stalks at the right edge of the path bent outward, pushed by someone stepping through. A figure entered the clearing. I held the beam on him. The light caught the legs first. Work jeans, heavy boots with dried mud along the sides. Then up, a flannel shirt untucked. And then the face. I did not recognize him. I have never seen him before or since. He was somewhere in his 40s, maybe. Heavy-set, dark hair. His face had an expression that I could not read. Not angry, not surprised, not anything that I could name. He was just there, standing in the clearing, 25 feet away, looking in our direction with whatever was on his face. He did not speak. We did not speak. And then every nerve in my body fired at once and I ran. I did not make a decision to run. My body made it without me. I turned and went back through the corn the way we had come. Stalks hit my face and arms. My feet found the ground on instinct. I had the flashlight in my hand and I kept it pointed forward and I moved as fast as I could, and the road hit me before I expected it. The gravel of the shoulder crunched under my shoes, and I got back to the car and jumped in and started leaning on the horn. Long blasts, loud as that car could manage. Eddie jerked awake in the back seat and said something incoherent. I kept hitting the horn. Short, hard blasts, one after another. Maybe 30 seconds went by. Then I saw movement at the tree line of the cornfield. Michael came stumbling out. He was not alone. He had Daniela by the upper arm, and he was moving fast, pulling her along. Her feet were barely keeping up. She was not walking on her own power. She was being moved. I got out and ran to them, and we got her to the car together. She was limp. Her head was down. Her body had no resistance in it. We got her into the back seat, and she sagged against the door. And then Michael pointed. There was a cut on the left side of her head, starting just above her temple and running maybe 2 inches. Not a scrape, a gash, clean-edged, the kind that comes from something with weight and a hard surface making contact with force. Blood had run down the side of her face and dried along her cheek and jaw. It was dark enough that I had not seen it in the low light when we were moving her, but now, looking directly at her in the glow from the interior lights of the open car door, I could see it clearly. Michael said one word. Drive. I drove. Part 5. The nearest hospital was 10 minutes from that stretch of Route 513. I made it in 8. We pulled into the emergency entrance and got Daniela inside. The nurses moved fast. Michael started explaining what had happened, and that is when I heard him say something I was not prepared for. He told them he had seen a man dragging her. I stopped moving. He said when he went further into that clearing path after I ran, he had turned left and he had found her, but she was not standing. She was on the ground, and someone was moving her, pulling her by the arms, moving away from the road, going deeper into the field. When the man realized Michael was there and coming toward him, he dropped her and disappeared fast into the rows. Michael had said nothing about this in the car. Not a word. The entire drive he had sat quietly in the back with her. I think he was still processing it. I think maybe a part of his brain was still deciding whether what he had seen was real. But standing in that emergency room, hearing him say it out loud to the nurse, I understood what had been happening while I was standing there, listening to footsteps in the corn. That man had not just been in the field. He had been doing something in the field, and we had interrupted it. Daniela needed 8 stitches. When she came around fully, she had no memory starting from before we even arrived at the party. Not the drive, not stopping, not going into the field, nothing. She woke up with her head bandaged and had to be told piece by piece what had happened to her. We filed a police report that night. The responding officer was patient and took everything down. He said they would look into it. We never heard a single thing back. No follow-up call, no news report. Nothing. I drove Route 513 for another 2 years after that night before I stopped taking it. I did not stop because I was afraid of the road. I stopped because every time I passed that particular stretch, I would slow down without meaning to. I would look at the shoulder, at the place where I had pulled over, at the wall of corn that sat back 15 feet from the asphalt. And every time I slowed down, I would think about how long she had been in there before Michael found her, and how much longer it might have taken if we had not gone in. Part 6. That was not the end of it for me. 3 years later, I was living in a different part of Ohio and working night shifts at a pharmacy in a town about 12 miles from where I was renting. The shift ended at midnight. I had been doing the drive for about 7 months by that point and had it down to a routine. Get in the car, take the highway, home in 20 minutes. Easy. I clocked out on a Tuesday night in late September and walked out to an empty parking lot. The air was cold, sharp. The sky was clear and there were stars, which is something you notice after months of Midwestern gray. I got in the car and pulled onto the highway. 12:17 on the dashboard clock. I remember that number the way you remember details from nights that turn out to matter. I had been driving for maybe 5 minutes. Low radio. Windows cracked an inch for the cool air. No other cars in either direction. Just the highway and my headlights and the dark on both sides. Then I saw something ahead. A line of orange traffic cones across the right lane. Reflective strips running along the sides, catching my headlights and throwing them back. Beyond the cones, maybe 50 feet further, a blue flashing light. The kind that sits on top of police vehicles. And in front of the cones, a figure standing in a reflective safety vest. I took my foot off the gas and let the car slow. My first reaction was confusion more than anything else. A checkpoint on this road at this hour made no sense to me. Not a significant amount of traffic. Not a high-profile area. Just a flat stretch of empty highway between two towns. But there was the vest. There were the cones. There was the blue light. I pulled up and stopped. The figure walked toward my car. As he got closer, I could see more of him. He was tall, 6 feet at least, lean maybe mid-20s. Short, dark stubble on his face, a small silver earring in his left ear. He was wearing what appeared to be a police uniform beneath the safety vest. He moved with a kind of unhurried evenness that read as calm but also registered as something slightly off, though I could not have explained why at that particular moment. He came to my window and I rolled it down. He asked for my license and registration. His voice was quiet, not the flat command of authority you expect from law enforcement, just quiet. I asked if I had done something wrong. I had not been speeding. I had done nothing wrong. He paused. His eyes moved slightly to the left just for a moment and then came back to me. He said it was a sobriety checkpoint. I said I understood that. But I asked him again why he needed my license and registration if I had not yet been found to have done anything wrong. There was another pause, longer this time. He told me to step out of the vehicle. Part 7. I got out. He was taller standing next to me than he had appeared through the window. He reached into the pocket of the vest and pulled out a roll of measuring tape. He crouched and stretched it flat on the asphalt, about 15 feet of it. He stood up and told me to walk the line, heel to toe arms out to my sides. I walked it, steady, no problem. I had had nothing to drink that night. I could have walked it in a straight line in the dark. The whole time he stayed directly behind me, closer than felt professional. I could hear his feet on the asphalt with each step. I could hear his breathing, low and even. When I reached the far end of the tape, I looked up and for the first time had a clear view of that blue flashing light. It was not on a police vehicle. It was sitting on the roof of an older sedan. Dark-colored small, the kind of car you see in mall parking lots, with a cracked side mirror and a peeling inspection sticker. There was no light bar, no decals, no markings of any kind, just the flashing blue light sitting loose on the roof. The way you would set something down for a moment while you sorted something out. I turned around. I asked him to show me his badge. He looked at me. I want to be precise about this. The expression on his face did not change, not even slightly. No irritation, no hesitation, no performance of reaching for a badge or starting to explain. Just his face still looking at me with nothing behind it. That nothing hit me harder than anything he could have said. I asked again. "I want to see your badge." He said something I could not quite make out. It sounded like he was telling me he would go get it. He turned toward the sedan and leaned in through the open driver's door, reaching for something inside. I did not wait to find out what it was. I walked back to my car, not running, walking with purpose. I got in, locked the door, started the engine, put it in drive. He straightened up from the sedan as my car started rolling. He had something in his hand. He raised it up and pointed it toward me. It was a handgun. I pressed the accelerator to the floor. The car jumped forward through the gap in the cones. I felt two of them scrape along the passenger side. I was doing 60 within a few seconds, and I did not lift my foot. I watched the mirrors. His headlights came on behind me, but I was already too far ahead. I had the highway. I had speed. I took the next exit without signaling and cut onto a neighborhood street. Turned my headlights off. Drove slow through a residential area I did not recognize until I found a lit gas station and sat in the lot for 4 minutes watching the street I had come in on. Nothing. I drove home on side roads, parked in my driveway, went inside and sat at my kitchen table with the lights on for a while. I reported it the next morning. The officer who took my statement said there had been no authorized checkpoint on that road that night. He took my description of the man and the vehicle and told me they would look into it. I checked the local news for 6 weeks after. No arrest, no mention of anyone else reporting a similar encounter. I do not know what was going to happen if I had stayed where I was when he reached into that car. I do not know what he wanted. I know what he had when he stood up. And I know that if I had been tired enough, or trusting enough, or just distracted enough that night to not notice the details that were wrong, I would not have made it back to my car. Part 8. The third one is the one that stayed with me the longest. Maybe because it was the most recent. Maybe because it was the most physical. I was 28, driving from Maine down to upstate New York to stay with family for a week. I left right after work around 5:30 in the afternoon. I was in my Jeep Wrangler with the soft top off because it was a hot summer and I wanted the open air. My brother had borrowed the car the day before and told me he had filled the tank. He had not. Or if he had, something was wrong with the gauge because by the time I was cutting through Vermont, well past midnight, the warning light came on. I started watching for signs. I spotted a blue highway service board with a gas symbol on it and took the exit. The ramp curved down to a 2-lane road that went through woods on both sides. No lights, no houses, just road and trees. I watched the odometer. The sign had indicated a station nearby. A half-mile passed, then a full mile. Then the engine started shuddering, that low, irregular knock of an engine running on vapors. The acceleration dropped off. The car rolled to the shoulder on its own momentum and stopped. I sat there for a moment with the engine ticking as it cooled. I called AAA, gave them my location. They said 20 to 30 minutes. I thanked them, got out of the car, and began to wait. The silence out there was a specific kind, Vermont countryside at 1 in the morning. Not a car in either direction, not a building in sight. Just the road and the wall of trees on both sides, and the sky above with no clouds and too many stars. I walked slow circles around the Jeep, checked my phone, texted my cousin to let her know I was going to be late. The air was warm and still. It smelled like pine and turned earth and something faintly animal. The kind of smell you only notice when you are standing still in a place that does not have people in it. I had been out there about 15 minutes when I heard movement in the trees to my right. Heavy footsteps, not quick and light, slow and deliberate, something with weight. My first thought was deer and my second thought was bear, and both of those things were consistent with where I was. Vermont, wooded, dark. Either one was possible. The footsteps got closer, then stopped, and then I heard 2 sharp claps. Loud, clean, deliberate, the specific sound of human hands clapping together. I froze. I waited. 3 more claps, slower, spaced apart. 1, then a pause, then 2, then a pause, then 3. I stood next to the passenger side of the Jeep and stared at the tree line. I could not see anything in there, just black shapes and depth. I called out, just a hello. I still do not fully understand why I did that. Instinct, maybe. Some part of my brain looking for the most ordinary explanation. Nothing came back. The woods were quiet again. I told myself it was an animal doing something animals do. I went back to circling the car. 2 minutes later, the footsteps came again, closer than before. And this time, they did not stop at the tree line. They moved through it. I heard the underbrush give way, the sound of something stepping from the dirt and leaves of the forest onto the gravel strip at the edge of the road. And then silence. I turned toward the tree line, and there was a head, just a head visible from behind the trunk of a large tree about 40 feet up the road from me. I want to be careful about how I describe this, because I have thought about it hundreds of times since, and I want to get it right. It was not a face looking directly at me. It was the side of a head, the angle of someone leaning out from behind a trunk to look at something. The eyes were visible, just barely, just enough that they caught a small amount of ambient light and reflected it back. Still, watching. I did not move. I kept my breathing as steady as I could, and I did not move. The head adjusted. Just slightly, just a small tilt. The way you move when you are trying to get a better angle on something. I took 3 steps backward and got into the Jeep. I locked both doors. I cranked the windows up as far as they would go. With the soft top off, the upper door frames were open air. There was no way to seal myself in. But I locked what I could lock, and I killed the headlights, and I slid down as low in the seat as I could, and I waited. The crickets stopped, all at once, like a switch. I have had people tell me that is something certain animals do to each other, a warning system. When something in the environment shifts in a specific way, they go silent. And when it happened on that road, it felt like the world narrowing to a point. Footsteps on gravel, coming from the shoulder, moving toward the car. I tracked them by sound, 20 feet, 15, 10, right outside the driver's door. I heard the door handle engage, a slow testing pull, checking whether it would open. It did not. The handle released. I pressed myself against the center console and stared at the open door frame above me. 1 second, 2 seconds. A hand came through fast. It grabbed my shirt at the shoulder and pulled. I screamed. I lost complete control of myself and screamed. And then light swept across the road. An engine sound. Around the bend, 200 feet up the road, a large truck was coming. Headlights washing the whole scene in white. The hand let go of me immediately. Gone. Just gone. The AAA truck pulled up and a heavy-set man in his 40s stepped out. I was already out of the Jeep, standing in the road on shaking legs, and I started talking before he even reached me. I told him all of it in about 40 seconds, out of order, breathing hard. He listened. He did not brush it off. He looked at the tree line for a long moment without saying anything. Then he filled my tank. Before he got back in his truck, he said to pull out behind him and stay on his tail until we hit the main road. I did exactly that. I followed his headlights for 3 miles until we reached the on-ramp for the interstate, and then I drove 70 miles an hour without stopping until I reached my family's exit. It was close to 4 in the morning when I pulled into my cousin's driveway. I sat in the car for a while before going in. I could not stop thinking about the timing of it. The AAA truck had rounded that bend maybe 30 seconds after that hand grabbed me. Maybe less. Whoever it was, they disappeared the instant those headlights appeared, which tells you something. It tells you they were aware. They were paying attention. They knew exactly what they were doing, and they were doing it in the gap between the moment of vulnerability and the moment of rescue. 30 seconds earlier or 30 seconds later, and I do not know what the rest of that night looked like. I check my gas now before any long drive. I tell someone my route. I lock my doors before I feel like I need to. And I will never, not under any circumstances, pull over on a dark road in an area I do not know and wait alone in the open for any reason. The last thing I want to say is this. Most nights nothing happens. Most times you pull over, it is just you and the road and whatever small inconvenience brought you there. And that is exactly why it works. The danger lives in the assumption that it will be fine. The person who grabbed me that night in Vermont had been out there in those woods, waiting, in the dark, for exactly that kind of moment. A broken car, an isolated road, someone alone who does not know where they are. Do not give them that moment. Tell me in the comments if you have ever had something happen to you on a road at night. I read all of them. And be safe out there.